If you're a beginner or intermediate level programmer, you want to do everything in your power to speed up your learning process and become a senior level software engineer as fast as possible. Sadly, there is no way to skip all the hard work. It's just impossible. But there are certain practices that you can start doing right now to double or even triple your learning speed, practically making your learning process faster than 90% of all the other programmers. I've been in this field for more than 5 years. I've started from nothing and became a senior software developer within 3 years. I've made a lot of mistakes and some of the big ones that really slowed down my growth. But right now, thankfully, I've learned my lessons. And here, guys, I want to share with you 5 things that, proven through my own experience, helped me to become a successful programmer. Alright, let's start with the basic things that you just need to get covered. First up, you need to start specializing right away. Your main goal should be to become a senior level developer in any field for that matter, because at that point you start to become a versatile programmer. This means that you will have all the necessary knowledge and skills to understand not just your area of expertise but many others. So for example, if you're a front-end developer, you have a pretty good idea of how back-end services work, because whether you like it or not, you have to spend time connecting all of these things together. And of course, this does not mean that you can now be a senior developer in any field. It will take some time to learn new tools, skills, and approaches. But since you're a senior software developer in one particular area, now you can spend 2 or probably 3 times less time to get to know all these things. And the learning process would be much easier because you already know all the fundamentals. Being an ultimate versatile programmer is not a myth. I started to specialize in game development with Unity, but now at work I have projects related to .NET backend or frontend with Flutter. And I can easily transition because I know how programming works in general. Start specializing as soon as possible. You could always switch your field afterwards. And I would go as far as to say that you should definitely switch your field at some point in the future because it will really help your learning process and make you a better programmer. Now let's talk about the people that we surround ourselves with. The environment where you learn is critical. It is much better to get a job at a company than to be a freelancer at the early stages of your career. I believe freelance in general hurts your learning process a lot, but I've already talked about this topic in a separate video, so if you're interested, you can go check it out right here. It's not only important to surround yourself with people, you need to make sure that you surround yourself with the right ones. If you feel like the smartest guy in the room, well, this is definitely not the right room for you. And what I mean here is that you need to change your environment. When you have people around you who are much smarter, you naturally start to adopt to it. And in this case, you start to learn and do more so that you can fit in. So make sure that you work in a good company or a good startup with a great team. It is also always a good idea to have a mentor by your side. Maybe it's also worth to get a tutor, but be sure to analyze your environment and the people that you communicate with. Maybe they're not as smart as you may think. The next point that we're going to talk about is that you need to constantly learn new things. You must make this a habit. It is very common for developers to get trapped in the never-ending loop of all the same boring tasks. I mean, this is the reality. Most of the time, you're not going to be working on groundbreaking features or building the project from ground up. Most of the time, you'll be fixing bugs, refactoring code, and integrating minor features. And the more this kind of thing starts to happen, the less you start to learn. And don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean that you cannot learn at work. But if you've been on the same project for more than a year right now, let's be honest, you're probably not learning as much as you could have. That's why you need to take responsibility for managing your learning process. If you feel like your learning started to slow down, you need to take matter into your own hands. Start taking online courses, certification exams, maybe work on pet projects or even startups. Even watching a single learning video will go a long way. If you're not moving forward, then you are moving backwards. There is nothing in between. Another thing that will highly help your learning process is to get to know how things work under the hood. Instead of being satisfied with just the basic knowledge, understand how and why everything works the way it does. For example, you may know that hash tables are amazing when it comes to performance, and you probably even know a few cases where you should use them. But do you know what makes them so great? Do you know what a hash function is or how it works? What are collisions and what are various ways to resolve them? Yes, this will take additional time and you will not see results right away. However, this is a compounding effect. All the little steps that you take every day will add up to a noticeable difference. If you come across the term that you don't know, Google it right away and learn what it is. Create a collection of all the terms and topics that you need to learn and keep track of whether you finish them or not. Maybe you are familiar with some things and others you just don't know. Do not leave things hanging. Keep track of what things you know and other ones that you are still yet to learn. The last thing that I want to talk about is practice. And of course, you're gonna say that practicing is important. This is very obvious, but are you really practicing enough? Let's generalize. There are two ways that you can learn how to code. You either practice by writing code yourself, or you learn best patterns, approaches, fundamentals, and so on. Maybe you read books, scientific articles, posts, and other things. Here you must maintain a very delicate balance so that you stay as effective as possible at every stage in your career. As a beginner, I would say you should dedicate 80% of your time just to writing code and take the rest to learn other additional things. Do not read books and call this learning. This is highly ineffective. Practice at this stage plays the most important role for you to learn as fast as possible. But of course, this is not something to do all the time. As you grow and become a middle senior developer, your focus starts to shift from practice. This is because you're just unable to learn certain things from it. Therefore, depending on what stage you are in your career, you need to determine the right practice to knowledge balance. Sit down and analyze how much you learned from practice and whether you should dedicate more or less time. But once again, remember that at early stages, practice is everything. All the things that I've talked about in this video are pretty universal and could also be applied to many other areas and not just programming. But the best thing about it is that they really work and they will have a huge impact on your life. Take some time to analyze and understand what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. Adopt the practices that I've talked about and you will be better than 90% of all the other programmers. Have a good day and see you.